In 2310, the colony war was raging across the settled systems. The most technologically advanced societies in human history were fighting an all-out war, throwing every available weapon against their enemy. 2 years into the conflict, neither the United Colonies nor the Freestar Collective had emerged as an obvious winner. Seeking a new tool to turn the tide of war, the UC Xeno Warfare Division began work on a new weapon. I'm the Resolute Cartographer, and this is the story of the research facility that sought that new weapon, and how it became their undoing. Created to facilitate the organized evacuation of Earth and the settlement of humanity's first colonies outside the Sol System in 2159, the United Colonies views themselves as the true inheritor of the legacy of Earth. Though the UC has generally been quite successful, its centralized and bureaucratic government has been repellent to a lot of people. Thus, when the Centaurus Proclamation of 2161 allowed for the legal recognition of new factions, there were many who sought a life outside the United Colonies. In 2189, the Freestar Collective was organized as a loose union of the people of the Cheyenne and Volii systems, and became the first sizable alternative to the UC. General contempt between these factions boiled over into war for the first time in 2196. 2 years prior, the United Colonies had parked a brand new medical star station in orbit over Depala in the Narian system. Known as the Clinic, the UC claimed this station to be in Narian as a humanitarian mission. The people of the Narian system, though, viewed this move as a prelude to annexation, and demanded the UC remove the Clinic. When they refused, Narian requested to join the Freestar Collective. In 2195, with the annexation complete, the FC mobilized their forces to secure the system against UC aggression. In 2196, the United Colonies mobilized their own forces in response, and the Narian War began. Over the next 20 years, the UC and the FC fought in sparse battles as the more powerful UC fleet attempted to pin down the smaller but more agile FC fleet. By 2216, the war was becoming unpopular with the people, and thus the conflict was settled with the Treaty of Narian. Among the issues agreed on, Narian became a recognized part of the Freestar Collective. The United Colonies and Freestar Collective were limited to claiming 3 systems each, and these systems would collectively be known as the Settled Systems. In the aftermath of the Narian War, there were those in the United Colonies left with a view that they had been on the verge of wiping the FC out. Thus, when hostilities began to flare again in the early 2300s, there was a sense that this time they would finish the job. Though large, powerful mechs were becoming popular weapons in both the FC and the UC, the United Colonies began to work on something special, the Xeno Warfare Division. Though humanity had encountered no higher intelligence in our exploration of space, worlds of hostile alien wildlife abounded. Just as our ancestors once trained attack dogs, cavalry horses, and war elephants, the Xeno Warfare Division would turn alien monsters into faithful companions for the United Colonies Marines. Unlike the animal weapons of the past, though, the UC would take the animal husbandry and guesswork out of the process by controlling the aliens directly. Through the implantation of a Neural Control Interface, or NCI, the United Colonies Marines would be able to command the loyalty of the aliens that served alongside them, or that was the goal at least. The Xeno Warfare Division would first need to find the right alien monsters with which to work. Authorized by UC leadership at MAST in 2306, the Xeno Warfare Division spent its first month finding the right personnel and a proper facility. Dr. Paulson, the head of the project, hired a team of associate xenobiologist technicians who settled into a secret facility in United Colonies space. Starting in February 2306, United Colonies Marines detachments began to deliver aliens to the project. On the 6th of February, the first candidate arrived, an alien reminiscent of a massive orb weaver spider. When technician Mickelson attempted to attach the neural control interface to the beast, it cocooned him. The security team managed to extricate the scientist from the cocoon, but they had to put the creature down in the process. Over the next few months, the team experimented on several other species of alien without success. On May 5th, the Marines brought the team an Ashta. This terrifying beast, native to Aquila and the Cheyenne system, is a good part of the reason Aquila City has walls. The fact that this beast came to the UC's program straight from one of the capital worlds of the Freestar Collective showed the skill of the Marines in extracting potential resources from behind enemy lines. That said, the deadly capacity of this beast also had some members of the team fear that any Xeno warfare program run by the FC might already have a leg up on the UC if they were working with Ashta. The process of attempting to control the Ashta broke those fears. The neural control interfaces didn't work particularly well on the Ashta, leading their specimen to nearly rip an arm off of one of the techs. The following week, the Marines delivered a truly alien species. So different was this creature that they didn't know how to classify it, eventually settling on reptans venenum, Latin for creeping poison. Unfortunately, the NCI didn't work on this beast either, but their string of failures would soon come to an end. On July 6th, the Marines dropped off a species of alien arthropod reminiscent of lobsters back on Earth. These creatures were docile in their natural state, could easily be paired with the NCI, and once under control, were a sight to behold when on the attack. News of their success led MAST to make some changes in the Xeno Warfare Division. First, Dr. Paulson was out as project lead, replaced by Dr. Hayden Wynn. Wynn had been with the project from the beginning, and it was thanks to his tuning of the NCI that the division had managed to control their new arthropods. This information shared with MAST by his peers led to his rise to the head of the department. The second change for the Xeno Warfare Division was in location. The entire project was relocating to Kreet, the homeworld of the arthropods at the center of their success story. The Xeno Warfare Division arrived at their new facility on February 11, 2307, finding it already fully operational. The fact that Kreet lay within the Narian system, Freestar Collective space, doesn't seem to have been as much of a concern for the UC as providing the division with a steady stream of aliens. For Dr. Wynn, this new facility and his new role were a dream come true. In his mind, Xeno Warfare was the next level of evolution of ground conflict, and he and his associates were getting in on the ground floor. With the goal of providing a real fighting force of Kreet's arthropods, Dr. Wynn instituted what he called Project Pet Shop Phase 1. Over the next 6 months, the Xeno Warfare Division outfitted many of the arthropods with NCIs. The creatures, named Obedientes Pez, or Stalkers, colloquially, showed themselves to be ideal weapons. They survived extreme environments of all types and could be instantly put under a high level of control. They were intended to serve alongside the UC Marines, and to that end, the facility soon welcomed the arrival of the Red Devils. A Marine unit stationed on Mars, the highly professional, red-eyed Red Devils were a force to be feared even before they welcomed the monstrous alien lobsters into their ranks. After months of work from the Xeno Warfare Division and combat training with the Red Devils, the United Colonies had a contingent of Xeno weapons ready for deployment. They wouldn't have to wait long to get their first taste of real combat. While the Red Devils had been training with their new allies on Kreet, the Freestar Collective had been setting up a farming outpost on Vesta. Located in the Lunara system, the United Colonies declared this operation to be the start of the Freestar Collective's attempt to claim a fourth system, a violation of the Treaty of Narian. The Freestar Collective denied these accusations, claiming it was just a farm, not a prelude to annexation. Diplomatic negotiations broke down. War were declared. In January 2308, the UC moved its forces in to evict the FC from Vesta. The first on the scene were the Red Devils and their stalkers. In a surprise attack, the UC Marines and their Xeno weapons completely overwhelmed Vesta's defenders, killing 93% of them while taking no casualties of their own. Dr. Wynn was thrilled by the results of his efforts, his stalkers bringing the FC to heel for their, quote, unmitigated gall, unquote, in attempting to settle a fourth system. Oddly enough, he was self-aware enough to realize that his own facility was an illegal operation in a fourth star system, but he maintained his moral outrage nonetheless. Soon, the colony war moved to nearby Nira, and the UC facility on Kreet was well placed to resupply the forces battling in the Narian system. Unfortunately for the United Colonies, this war wasn't quite the stomping out of the Freestar Collective they had expected. The FC held their ground on Nira, and the war that began with a total victory soon became an endless slog. Nira became a constant battleground where the UC and FC attempted to dislodge their opponent from the world. Entire stretches of the planet became uninhabitable thanks to the brutality of their war machines. With enough stalkers on hand, the Xeno Warfare Division moved into Project Pet Shop Phase 2, and experimentation began on new species. None proved to be enough to break the FC. In May 2308, Dr. Wynn considered the weaponization of heat leeches. These disgusting, arm-sized beasts that wormed their way into machinery and fed off the heat it produced were considered little more than a nuisance. Wynn wanted to amp up their heat siphoning ability, getting them to the point where they could shut down engines with their heat draw. Fortunately for all involved, he didn't have the means to make this a reality. Though the Xeno Warfare Division had provided the UC with many aliens to fight the FC, they were still looking for something more potent. A creature with which they could turn the tide. In August 2310, over 2.5 years into the colony war, the Marines delivered what they believed they needed, a terror morph. Originally discovered approximately a century prior and called Uccisium Machina, Latin for killing machine, the Terramorph was an alpha predator with individuals capable of taking down entire squads of Marines. On August 20th, 2310, the day came to fit the neural control interface. It was a disaster. Though they managed to attach the NCI to the Terramorph, when the team attempted to sync with the device, the monster went into a frenzy. It smashed its containment and slaughtered the technicians. Dr. Wynn watched helplessly as it tore through them before raging off into the complex with a security team in pursuit. He attempted to get to the comms relay to call for help, only to discover that it was wrecked. Alone in the facility, he faced down the death he had intended to dole out to the Freestar Collective. In the aftermath of this disaster, the United Colonies appears to have left this facility abandoned, even leaving the corpses of the science team to rot. When the Colony War ended the following year, both mechs and xeno-warfare were banned by treaty, and facilities like this were left to gather dust. Over the 2 decades since the war, these old war factories became home to the lesser factions of humanity. In the case of the Kreet Research Facility, the faction that would take possession was the Crimson Fleet. In 2330, the Crimson Fleet forces stationed at the Kreet Research Facility chased the constellation ship Frontier to the nearby moon Vectera. They had heard that the ship was full of treasure. The first party they sent after the ship was wiped out at an Argos Extractors mining outpost on Vectera. In the aftermath of this failed attack, command of the Frontier passed to one of the miners, a future member of Constellation who became the new captain of the Frontier. When the Frontier jumped into orbit, the Crimson Fleet attacked once more. After these pirates were put down, the Frontier headed straight for their base on Kreet to make these attacks stop. Landing away from the facility, the captain of the Frontier began the hike towards the fleet's base of operations, observing the stalkers that drew the United Colonies to the planet 23 years prior. While clearing the base of the pirates, the captain of the Frontier learned the story of the weapons program housed there and observed the wreckage of its failure. After dislodging the last of the pirates from their adopted home, the captain of the Frontier returned to their new ship and headed for the Constellation Lodge in New Atlantis. That about does it for the narrative of the Kreet Research Facility, but I've got some notes before closing things out. First, this is not the last time we'll talk about the UC's Xeno-Warfare program. It and Terramorphs feature heavily in one of the faction quest lines. I'm not going to spoil that information, nor which faction at this time, but I look forward to sharing it with y'all in the future. Second, investigating this lore has altered my perception of the Colony War. When I first read about it, heard details about the Battle of Partak Pass from Captain Myong and Private Sai, and walked the UC Vanguard displays, I concluded that the Freestar Collective had mechs, while the United Colonies had xeno-weapons. Then I found the mech factory on Mars and learned that the UC world Gagarin had its economy devastated by the ban on mech production. This information told me that both sides used mechs. In investigating Dr. Wynn's terminal entries, especially the early ones, I came to a belief that the Freestar Collective had a Xeno-Warfare Division too. Comments such as, have Freestar Collective scientists managed to weaponize their greatest natural predator, and any fear that our Freestar Collective counterparts have managed to weaponize the Ashta have been completely dispelled, seem to point to the existence of a Xeno-Warfare program within the FC. This video was delayed for a few days while I worked through the Freestar Rangers questline, investigated Aquila City, and other Freestar Collective locations, searching for hints of such a program. I found none. Dr. Wynn was simply assuming that the FC was going down similar paths in weapon development. I've concluded that both sides used ships, ground troops, and mechs. The Freestar Collective had better mechs, while the United Colonies had xeno-weapons. I don't know if that's 100% true, but that's the conclusion I've come to at this time. If I find more information in the future, I'll update that. Third, it seems clear to me that the United Colonies leadership wanted the Colony War. Their response to the colonization on Vesta was a mirror of the situation with the clinic. They had sent their star station into a system and had had war break out in response. When the FC settled a farm on Vesta, it gave the UC the perfect excuse to reignite the conflict and crush the Freestar Collective with their brand new weapons. Fourth, I decided to search for the Terramorph at the heart of this story as I surveyed Kreet. I found one and took it down, though I don't know that this specific Terramorph is the one at the heart of the story. Fifth, though the Treaty of Narion supposedly states that the Freestar Collective and United Colonies can only claim 3 systems, they actually control 4 systems each. The United Colonies hold the Sol, Alpha Centauri, Wolf, and Ptolemy systems, while the Freestar Collective hold the Cheyenne, Volii, Narion, and Valo systems. You can even find a display linking to this fact in Mast. This seems to be a violation of the Treaty of Narion. The only thing I can guess as to why neither considers Ptolemy or Valo to be a fourth claim for the other is that these stars are part of multi-star systems. Though I didn't find a real-world analog for either Narion or Valo, real-world Ptolemy is part of the Alpha Centauri trinary star system. Sixth, the fact that Dr. Wynn was considering weaponizing heat leeches takes on a new light when you know a little bit more about them, but I won't spoil that story at this time. Seventh, I attempted to find both the giant orb weaver spider species and the creeping poison species, but there's not enough information given to make a definitive pronouncement on what species these were specifically. Eighth, if you're interested in the real-world history of humanity's attempts to use animals as weapons, I highly recommend the book Greek Fire, Poison Arrows, and Scorpion Bombs. Along with the use of animals in warfare, the author, Adrian Mayer, goes over ancient uses of chemical and biological weapons. Lastly, the Colony War was one of the most destructive events in human history, and should have served as a lesson on seeking peaceful solutions. Unfortunately, just 19 years after the end of the war, a stroll around UC military outposts easily leads to the conclusion that such a lesson will have to be taught to the people of the settled systems at least one more time. Alright, I think that'll do it for this video. Follow me on X for lore video announcements at Gaming with Maps. My Discord is open to the public, there's a link in the channel's banner. I stream every Friday evening on YouTube, come check it out if you're interested. If you appreciate what I do here and you want to support the channel financially, you can become a member on YouTube or a patron with Patreon. I want to thank my channel members and patrons, Mesothelioma, 76 of Texas, Dark Malcontent, Real76, Dr. Orion, Samsung Smart Fridge, Night Spearhead, Ahotep, and Prince Julius for their support. This has been the Irresolute Cartographer. Thanks for watching, I'll see you again next time.